Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and we are joined today by Rob. He is the founder of Gussy's Gut. Thank you, Rob, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. Appreciate you having me.
So Gussy's Gut. So first time I ever saw Gussy's Gut was on Instagram, and I thought, what a clever name. And it actually got me to click something open and to take a little search and to see that the little dog on the logo is it Gussy or Gus?
Well, his real name it's Italian. It's Gusto, for zest for life. But you can call him Gus, Gussy, Gustavo. I call him. Depends on my mood and his mood. But he's 8 now, and he's always by my side.
Yeah. And that's good. He works for a living. My dogs don't have jobs. They don't have their own company. I'm not sure what we're doing wrong on my side.
Well, the shame is, like, you can have kids and put them on the payroll and basically get deductions for your kids, but you can't do that with your dogs. Maybe have to work on that, on that legislation.
Right. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got into the canine wellness business.
Yeah. Well, first, let me just give credit where credit's due. So I remember being on this dog walk. I had this idea to create fermented foods for the gut for dogs. And I called my friend Michelle and I said, what do you think I should call this business? And it was inspired by my dog. So she said, well, tell me a little bit more about it. And I said, well, it's good for, if you've got like a temperamental, gut, bad digestion, it's good for gas. It's good for a lot of things that, when you heal the gut, you can heal a lot of things. And so in her true, she's very good at this. In her true fashion, she said on the same walk, she said, Gussy's gut, fussy gut, gassy gut, just take Gussy's gut. And I thought, man, like, what a winner. So Anyway, that's how the name came about.
Yeah.
I'm not original enough to name it after my dog with the name Gut after it, but I liked it. It made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So you were asking me how we started?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you and your background. Have you always been kind of in the dog wellness space? Was there something that inspired you to get into this space? Tell us how you started, the origins of Gussy's Gut.
Yeah. So I'm a big health seeker. I'm voracious with knowledge, both human and pet. I've been obsessed since really at a very young age, keeping my dogs living as long as possible. Once you find out that they really only live, if you're lucky. I remember hearing it was like 14 years if you're lucky. I thought, 14 years, that's horrible, So the question has been in my head since I've been very young. And I've always been very close to my dogs. I've spent a lot of time when I was really young with my dogs, trained my dogs always, like very, very young age. So my communication with them has been really, deep. And so is my relationship. So once I picked up a book at the age of 16, it was called Life Extension. And it's a really thick book by Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. And they're basically two hippies that got dismissed for being hippies. And, the medical community said, you don't know what you're talking about. These supplements don't make any sense. Fast forward 20 years. I read that book at the age of 16. I'm 53 now. I'm not going to do the math, but that was a seminal book and moment for me in thinking about how you think about anti-aging, how you think about living longer, extending life. So, and there's actually a supplement line by the same name called Life Extension.
Yeah.
So it's based on the book. I think some company took over the Life Extension brand, but turns out 20 years later, a lot of it, almost all of it, is completely spot on.
Mm-hmm.
So what the book taught me was that there are levers and dials, and you can do fine tuning with dials and pull big levers in everything. So that includes anti-aging and life extension, and supplements can be those levers and dials. Some of them do a lot of work. Some of them do little fine tuning, like adaptogens, for example, or like would be the dials.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think about is I'm just constantly thinking in terms of what is going in our mouths, what is going in our pets' mouths, what role do those nutrients play? And then I went through a phase when I got my first dog as an adult. My first dog in the year 2000 was his name was Buddy, another black lab. And immediately, you know how it is with your first dog. You probably have this experience. This is your favorite thing ever. And how do at least my mind goes immediately to, how do I keep this dog living like 20 years?
Right.
And so I did the whole supplement thing. I got because I was so knowledgeable about human supplements, I also hired really, really great veterinarians. So I hired Dr. Marty Goldstein and Dr. Bob Goldstein while I was living in San Diego, doing telehealth with them in New York and Connecticut. And if you don't know who those two people are, they're two of the best vets in the world, holistic. And they referred me over to Dr. Ian Billinghurst, who is now my head advisor of our company and my business partner. So, that was 25 years ago, the year 2000. So I've been on a journey that still is ongoing, always will be. And I went through this whole phase of supplements. And then I really started to figure out, okay, well, they're getting me good results, but what can get me better results? And I've actually come full circle to this whole real food approach. Like, how do you optimize real food?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you have the same experience because you mentioned to me, you have a bodybuilding background. So in bodybuilding, you know how this was back in the old days, very chalky, horrible tasting. Now you've got everything. And we learn more about ways to process the simplest things, whether it be whey protein or glutamine or whatever it may be. Those processes get better and better, and the science gets better for them. So back then they weren't that great. They're better now today. Now we have things like, we better distillates, better concentration standardizations, and we also have cleaner, processes, that aren't using chemicals to extract vitamins out of anything. But I still prefer whole foods, and that's what Gussy's Gut's about. We do whole food solutions and they're fermented to gut issues.
And a lot of what you just said is a concept or multiple concepts that not only resonate with me, but I think anyone that's been a listener of the podcast for a while will probably recognize every so often. These kinds of topics come up on here. So talking about real food, clean food, organic food, talking about bioavailability, which, we'll talk about in a second, how important making sure, whatever you're putting in, just because you put it in, it needs to be bioavailable. Otherwise it's useless. And then just working on the longevity and health of our dogs, which I think that market in and of itself has grown more and more with time. And the more that we learn, and I think we are revisiting some of those, I don't want to say older concepts, but there were books way before their times talking about different plant medicine, herbal medicine, adaptogens, like you said. And now we're going back and saying, oh, wow, those have some veracity. So
Yeah. Amen.
let's talk about some of these qualities with Gussy's Gut, or let's back up. So we'll talk Gussy's Gut. Explain to us the products that are available and kind of the makeup of those products.
Okay, great. So what's my favorite thing to talk about? So what I'm excited about is, it's not very sexy to talk about, is sourcing. So that's one of my favorite things to talk about. So my first product is called Daily. And it's called that because you take it daily. And it's 19 superfoods. A lot of them are very, they're things that I wanted to give Gus, and they can be a real pain to process or shop for in the regular grocery store. They're all organic. It's all organic or regenerative.
Mm-hmm.
Which I believe is above organic standards. Nowadays, I think organic is the floor that you should be accepting in your life and your dog's life or your pet's life. And we take those, and these can be vegetables, greens, tubers, herbs.
Mm-hmm.
We do all that in one. We literally get pallets of this organic produce. We turn it into like baby food. We mush it up and then we layer it in big barrels so that we can ferment it. And we let that sit for, we use Redmond's real salt and goat kefir, grass fed. And we let that do its thing, its magic all by itself for 2 weeks. We never look at it, touch it for 2 weeks. And then we check it. It's a 4.5 pH, which is very acidic, food safe. So that's like a built-in natural mechanism to be complete. Basically, our product is safer than the salad you'll ever eat at any restaurant, even a fine restaurant.
Yeah.
And then we drain it, strain it, and then we freeze dry it gently. And then that turns it into a powder. And then we'll whip it up a little bit just to make it finer particles, and we package it. And that's it. So it's full of, the fermentation process that we do is just thousands of years old. It's very clean. It's very simple. Even the Redmond's real salt, I'm sure you probably know Redmond's. That salt is high mineral, 100% natural, mined out of the mountains in Utah. So it's old ancient seabed stuff. So even the salt we use is, we think it's the best. It's even better than Himalayan and Celtic, we think, in terms of like microplastics. We did all that research early on. So now you move on to a second product, which is called Gussy's Guttables. And that's heritage regenerative pork from white oak pastures. And we add a little raw organic Manuka honey out of New Zealand. And then we add a blend of fermented vegetables that's made just for those treats. Those 3 key ingredients, we put them together and make these medallions out of those.
And my dogs love those.
You've had them.
Yeah. Yeah. So my dogs love those. And my dog with no teeth, I will like crumble one of those up because she's like, I want some too. And she even likes it. And she's picky because we make all of her food. It's all human grade. She gets her own. Of course, all 4 of my dogs eat different. But when it's time for one of those treats in the evenings lately, they have been loving those.
Awesome. That's great. I didn't know you had some. So isn't it weird how they're dry, but they seem tender?
Yes. Yes. I was worried. Like when I pulled one out, I was like, oh, it's kind of dry. I wonder how hard this is going to be. But I was able to crumble it. And my 16-year-old dog with literally no teeth was able to kind of like move the crumbs around and eat it. She didn't have any problems with it. And I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it happened magically. We couldn't make that happen. It just happened. And of course we dehydrate it to the standards of treats, but it still comes out kind of nice and it's like supple or like tender, whatever the word. I wouldn't say moist because we test it for moisture activity.
Right.
So I wouldn't say that, but it feels that way. It's very interesting. And then our third and new product that I'm over the moon about, like over the moon, and I've been working on it really hard, is called Youthful Grasses and Sprouts. And that is 4 fermented grasses and 3 sprouts. And we ferment those. And that's all it is. And we package that into a powder. You can, theoretically, you could put all those things in a bowl. You can use them independently or together. They're completely complementary. And everything's fermented.
So we have been trying the daily, and for anyone listening, the daily is really easy to use because our 2 youngest dogs eat raw and we just sprinkle it on the raw food. And then our next dog has a ketogenic kibble, which just, kind of just works out for him. And we sprinkle it on that. And then our oldest dog, we do like a ground turkey fish oil of a sort, which they all get a fish oil, but anyway, a fish oil of some sort. And then she actually gets dehydrated vegetables from Dr. Harvey's. And then we add in the Gussy's, like the daily on top of that. So it's easy to use regardless of how you're feeding. So if you're a raw feeder, a kibble feeder, homemade, I think that's one of the nice things about the product is it's very easy to use.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is this: if we want to get the health into our dogs, we have to make it simple. We are big proponents of fermentation. We tell you, if you want to ferment at home, please do that. Like that's the ultimate. You get local produce, ferment it. Just do the same process, 2-week fermentation, and feed it. You don't need Gussy's gut. obviously for us, and we know we're not going to be able to serve the entire world, of
Hmm.
dogs. So we'd love if you've got some DIY energy in you, that you do that yourself, you ferment. But for those who can't and don't want to, then that's what we're here for. And we have to make it convenient and easy. Otherwise, most people just can't do it. That's why I think everybody who feeds kibble knows it's not the best thing. Every single person. Okay. Pretty much. Okay. Why do people do it? Well, there is some
Yeah.
price factor, of course, but it's mostly convenience. And that's the thing that will never go away with kibble. So we try to take an approach of like, how do we create with the least amount of processing, something that's whole, natural, and super beneficial and super packed with nutrients. And so we know who we are, and we're not mistaken in where we are in the current zeitgeist of pet ownership. And so we want to we would love if we had no job at all and every single person, fermented on their own, but that's just not the case. So here we are.
Right. Now, let's talk a second about fermented foods and how does a fermented food benefit your gut health more than just, let's say, a raw or a cooked vegetable?
Yeah, no, it's really so if you go to our channel, Gussy's Gut channel on YouTube, we've interviewed like, I don't know, 100 of the top vets in the world. And so I've had a lot of conversations. So, I would say at least over 100 hours of conversations with the top vets in the world. Many of them do phone consults and consultations. Many of them don't. And so I've been able to have like off camera on both ends, the front and the back end, and on camera conversations with them. So we all have one of the things that Dr. Billinghurst and I have asked all of them, including, Dr. Billinghurst is quite specialized and educated in this area, but they all seem to agree that if you threw vegetables in a blender and you got it to that blended consistency, like a smoothie,
Hmm.
you break a lot of cell wall, you get a lot more absorption than in its whole form. So if you chop a carrot or blend a carrot, those are two different absorptions. The
Hmm.
chopped is going to be less, the blended is going to be more. The blended, they think, is somewhere between a 5 to 7% absorption of the nutrients of that thing. So again, think about carrots. Let's just use that as an example. Raw blended carrot be 5 to 7% absorption. When you whip it up like we do, you blend it and then you ferment it, you can get anywhere, there's estimates as low as 15%, so double, up to 30 or 50% in some things. And it depends on the thing that you're talking about, the nutrient and the food.
Hmm.
At the very least, I say we at least can think that there's a double absorption rate. And so you would say, well, how do you prove that? The only way to prove that is you do a controlled study where you control the feeding of dogs. You do the same set of dogs. It's very complicated. It's quite expensive. It's not easy at all. And you'd have to do blood tests, like give them the raw, do blood tests. How much are they getting of beta carotene? You could do some things. You'll never perfectly be able to test that. So this is based on an educated guess of like, holistic vets that have had 30, 40 years experience or more. And that's also based on human studies, like, and it depends also how good the gut is of the dog you're testing. So you have a dog that's like had a horrible life of like bad nutrition or over medication, over vaccination, whatever it may be, whatever the thing is, you've got going to have challenges that the other dog won't have in terms of gut terrain health and diversity. So
Hmm.
you could see real quick it gets very complicated, but better absorption is really what I would say, and I think of it as a twofold improvement.
And absorption, for anyone listening, it also applies for humans. So if you think about humans, let's say you run to the store, you get a vitamin C supplement. You're like, yeah, I'm taking 1,000 milligrams a day. Maybe, maybe not. And who knows what you're absorbing. So, number one, the sourcing of that. Number two, the bioavailability of that. And then number three, I mean, what's going on internally? Have you taken a ton of antibiotics? Are you immune compromised? And so, thinking very much of this the same way we would with humans, there's different levels of absorption. And so that affects how, I guess you could say, how effective it is, how efficacious a supplement might be. And so I know that's one thing you guys focus on is bioavailability. And so this certainly differs from giving your dog a once daily pill that has been processed and heated and processed and heated, and your dog just swallows the pill. That probably is not benefiting them even, 5% as much as a supplement that has been sourced correctly and processed minimally with fermentation.
Yeah. And for people who don't know what processing means, it basically means like how many stages of, so like when you get, let's use carrots again. It's easy. When you get a thing of carrots at the grocery store, it's basically been handled, but not processed. It's in its whole form. When you chop it, that's a processing. It's a step. It's very minimal. When you blend it up, that's another processing, a little bit more than minimal. Anytime you cook it, do anything to it. Anytime there's a stage, it's a form of processing. There's no real rule or standard for it, but you want something that's more minimally processed. And so you're right, Brittany, that's, when it goes into a vat, these big monstrous, like 25, 50, 100 liter vats, they're stainless steel. They're hooked up to tubes and there's pressure and heat and mixing involved. We get away very quickly from, us being in the garden and, preparing food.
Mm-hmm. And the goal of Gussy's gut overall is to improve digestion and improve gut health. So, and
And
then,
nutrient absorption. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I was going to say gut health, leads to everything. That's where the immune system predominantly lies. I even had a trainer talk to me once about, well, gut health might impact your dog's behavioral manifestations. If you change your dog's diet, you might change their behavioral issues. Lo and behold, she was right. Now, it wasn't the end all be all, but it was quite eye opening that changing a dog's diet could change their overall behavior. And so, have you had testimonials where people have seen behavior changes in their dogs?
Yes. So you can go on our Facebook, there are comments. I like those because reviews always feel weird. We only do verified reviews from our customers. So our reviews are legitimate, but I think people get a little weirded out with reviews. They just seem to be not trusting of them.
Yeah.
So just go to our Facebook and our Instagram, look at our comments. I just a few days ago, I think it's maybe 4 or 5 days ago, I just had some gentleman say that he has 6 working dogs. I think they're probably Australian Shepherds, I think. And he said he has them on daily on our Gussy's Gut Daily. And he said the change in their energy and their lack of anxiety is profound. He said that his dogs are forever changed, is what he said. And I read this and I was like, I just stumbled upon it. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, did he just say 6 dogs are on this product? And that's like, when did this guy start? I started looking him up and like, how long did this take to happen? And it wasn't that long. And so I think some dogs you're going to get an absolute tremendous benefit quick, and some dogs are going to take like 90 days. What we say is give us at least 4 to 6 weeks, and it's going to take 90 days to reach its full effect. That's what, after thousands of customers we've seen, is 90 days is max. Minimum is 4 to 6 weeks. So we have a trial pack that we sell that just gives people an easier entree into the product to make sure their dog loves it, will eat it, it agrees with them, they're happy. And then they go, okay, I'm ready to order a full size pack and give it 4 to 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that people should be on the lookout for? Because anytime you introduce something new, even if like a fermented food, I know that there could be some initial upset stomach, maybe some diarrhea. So do you have any advice? Let's say someone starts on it and they notice their dog has maybe runnier stools. Do you guys have any advice, or is that common? What's your feedback?
Yeah. So if you go to our YouTube channel, we have a frequently asked questions section, just short videos with Dr. Billinghurst and myself. And one of them is about diarrhea. We don't get it a lot, but when we do get it, or that we've at least get, feedback on where it comes to us, I would say, I'm going to totally guess here. I'd say like 1 or 2 a month, if that.
Mm-hmm.
But I always think it's a really good sign. I think that the dogs with diarrhea need something like this the most. And I want to think of it this way. If you're having trouble digesting vegetables, let's say in our world, we have broccoli and that gives you diarrhea. What it really is saying, it's signaling to you, you don't currently have the set of microbes and the gut terrain health that's needed to break that broccoli down. So everything has substances and compounds in it. Our microbes break those things down.
Mm-hmm.
So all it's signaling to you is that this is, I think where people go immediately is, oh my gosh, my dog can't have X, whatever the thing is. And what we would say is, and we say this in the video, Dr. Billinghurst is very clear and emphatic about it, is give it time. Don't worry about it. We're not talking the kind of like run wild, explosive, horrifying diarrhea like in the house. We're talking about like your dog says he has to go out or she has to go out and there's a loose runny stool. If you had explosive diarrhea, I would start to look at some serious gut issues like leaky gut or something like that.
Yeah.
But what we just say is like, this is a good opportunity. Give it time. You can back off a little bit, then go back up to our recommended dosage serving size.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say lean into it and relax. Anything but chronic diarrhea is fairly normal. Body's getting adjusted. And if you look up the literature, it takes a mammalian, we're mammals, or dogs are mammals, cats are mammals, that we just need to give about 2 weeks for the microbes to adjust. So, it's the same thing if you go from where you are now, Brittany, in Florida, you come to California, or you go to Mexico, or you go to India, very different demand on your microbiome being in those places. And so you'll notice sometimes there's some adjustment that's needed. And all you did was drank the water and, maybe not in Mexico, but you just got adjusted and you got a dose of the local microbiome that's in the air and the water and the food and all that stuff.
Yeah. So where can people find Gussy's Gut?
So just at gussysgut.com, and it's GUSSYS.GUT.com. And we're in a very few set of stores, but it's only because we really like the stores. They want to support us. We wanted to be in there, but really we sell direct to all of our customers in the United States. And then in Canada and internationally, we've partnered up with another website that we think is doing a lot of great things called dogsage.ca. They're a Canadian company, and we ship them a whole load of our stuff, and then they ship it out to Canadians, so it's not so expensive. And they also ship to our international customers where they can.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for joining us. This was really informational and helpful, so we appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Brittany. It was great to talk to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.